So you're talking about the things that are like increasing frequency or intensity of whatever they were doing based on, let's say it's a core or a C-top or a past, the Kilpatrick screener. But that it's relative to, the level we were at in the spring versus the level where we're at now. And how does that look compared to normal summer slide, as you previously said?
Right.
Is that a fair
It is
summary?
very fair.
Okay.
And what does our IEP anticipate? If my IEP is finished in, if my annual review is in November and I'm suddenly at risk of not meeting any of my goals and objectives because I haven't really had instruction for 6 months, then I think the intensity of service is going to happen soon. If we have a student whose IEP was just developed in April, we've got some more time to sort of spread out that intensity and make sure that we can really kind of get those skills back in place by the time we're at the end of our IEP. So very individualized.
Yeah, that begs the obvious question. If you're in a district where the intervention specialists are already stretched and at capacity as far as the number of students and time, what are these districts to do to manage getting all of these kids what they need?
I think we're going to probably see that we're going to be intensifying services. So we may see smaller group sizes. We might see a shift in kind of the intensity of the remediation product used. I also think that they may have to look at bringing in some additional tutors or paraprofessionals to support instruction, particularly for the intervention specialists that are providing support in the gen ed setting and maybe not specifically addressing goals and objectives. One school that I'm working with, we're really talking about trying to use paraprofessionals more in that support mode and shifting the intervention specialist to providing the direct instruction as opposed to maybe being in the classroom doing more of a support model. And that's not to limit students' participation in the gen ed setting, because that needs to happen, but just in what way can we more effectively use paraprofessionals and intervention specialists to provide that instruction.
So an example of a paraprofessional would be, excuse me, like somebody who is a certified OG tutor, but not an intervention specialist. So they're sort of brought into the system to provide OG specific.
I think that would be a model where we're bringing in other people to provide direct instruction. So bringing in a certified OG provider, even though they're not an intervention specialist, to provide reading services would be perfectly appropriate.
Right.
I think that that's a conversation that the IEP team would need to have, because the parents would need to be aware that their provider was changing. And the provider, if on the IEP says intervention specialist, it would have to shift to reading tutor.
Right.
I'm talking about more, we have a lot of intervention specialists that are staffing and co-teaching general education classrooms.
Right.
And I think we can use paraprofessionals who are college educated individuals who maybe don't have a teaching degree, but who can work under the supervision of the intervention specialist to provide support and coaching in the classroom setting.
Oh, cool.
And so if we can use our intervention specialist to provide more targeted direct instruction and shift the role of the paraprofessional to support in the gen ed setting, that would be helpful. I think giving our general education teachers more responsibility for providing some of those supports in the general education setting would also be appropriate, recognizing that gen ed teachers are often as busy as the intervention specialists.
Yeah,
but I think we need to be really creative right now to figure out what's going to work. And budgets are being cut with school districts right now.
Yes.
The CARES COVID-related money for school districts is not making up for the budget cuts that they just experienced. And so getting more staff, running those buses more often, having to purchase more PPE and disinfectant. We're just piling on at this point. It's going to be a real challenge for school districts to make this work.
Agility, that's going to be the word of the day.
Creativity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would expect to see
we need all those dyslexic minds to think outside the box and come up with the solutions for this.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, that I like about what you're saying is oftentimes when there's a co-taught class, you have the regular ed teacher and then the IS. And the regular ed teacher just kind of has in the back of their mind that those are not really my students. Those are kind of the IS's students. And that is a very dangerous and I think counterproductive stance. And so to be able to, maybe putting in a paraprofessional, but really charging and educating, that's the whole thing. If we can get these teachers with the proper understanding that they are their children, I think it could even make a cultural shift that would be very productive.
Yeah, Brett, from your lips to God's ears, right? I think that there are very effective collaborations that happen with gen ed and special ed teachers when they truly share responsibility for all students. And I unfortunately think that you're right, that it does happen at least 50% of the time, if not more, that the gen ed teacher is presenting the curriculum. And the modifications, the accommodations, the reteaching, the support is kind of left to the intervention specialist to implement with that small group of students. But it can happen very effectively, very efficiently through the guidance and support of the gen ed staff as well. So I would really like to see schools maybe relying on that model a little bit more heavily, properly training staff to implement all of those accommodations, making sure that they're happening, and then using our intervention specialists to provide the additional direct instruction, Mary Lou, that you were talking about, trying to intensify time, make smaller group sizes, more frequent opportunities for practice. Skills are gained when we practice them. Yeah. So that's where that length of time of intervention can really make a difference.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, I can't wait. What is the timing on the guidance? Do we have any idea?
So Ohio Department of Education issued a letter in May saying that it would be out the end of May. It's not. So we're watching for it. I know that everyone's kind of on pins and needles trying to figure out whether it's going to be, again, required or recommended for all of these different things to be in place. So, I think we should know that. I would be comfortable trying to schedule like a follow-up session on this for the end of June, beginning of July, hoping that we'll be able to get out to parents what the guidance document says. Now, that doesn't mean that every district is going to adopt it, especially if they're just recommended guidance. Every district is probably going to adopt a different policy. From what I'm hearing, districts are hoping to have their individual guidance documents out to their families by the end of July. So that does not give families a long time, maybe just 2 weeks, to figure out, what it's going to look like in the fall. But again, right, unprecedented times, unprecedented measures, and unprecedented patience is probably going to be required for all of us to make it through and to see what August is really going to look like for our kids.
One of the things, I have some kids in college, and they are trying to move it up and then stop at Thanksgiving because they feel like it might start back up and when it cools off, and that's flu season. Is there any discussion of that with
so I think that's plan C, right? We talked about plan A and plan B. I think Plan C is, what if we have to go back to a complete online program? I don't think, because of the required number of school days, that we're going to see schools close for extended period like Thanksgiving to New Year. I think we just lose too many school days trying to do that. I do think that there are opportunities for schools to consider going back to a 100% virtual learning model if we see a resurgence in infections, either statewide, nationally, internationally, or even if we start to see them emerging within buildings. And so if you've got a principal and a couple of teachers who come down with it, and there's a mandatory quarantine then for a 2-week period of time for anybody who gets, test positive or has been exposed, then suddenly you can see where this individual school may need to quarantine for 2 weeks. And that'll probably shift to an online instruction model. So I anticipate a lot of fluidity back and forth. I'm hoping that if school districts are doing that they're creating more standardized protocols for what online instruction is really going to look like, and that will include direct instruction of all students, including, for your gen ed classes, because that was really a difficult part of this the past couple months.
One of the things that our district did, and we actually tried to do it within OH Kid, was just sort of gather some feedback from our members on how the whole distance learning was going, with the idea that we would then present it to our districts or maybe the governor. And then our district turned around and asked for our feedback. And so we encouraged within our district everybody to send their feedback. But that might be something for parent groups to do, is to send something around. If your district hasn't already done it, gather feedback from your parent group parents and then provide that to the district so that they, at least have an idea of, Zoom calls are much better than checking in on occasion or having an hour where the kid can call in if they're having trouble.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I think it provides a voice for parents with students with disabilities to be heard from separately from the general population if it's sort of a coordinated effort by a parent group. It's a great idea.
Okay. Well, anything else, Mary Lou?
No, I'm so thankful, Kerry. Gosh, this has been so informative. I know people are really going to appreciate it.
Oh, well, I hope so. It's always hard when what I have to say is, oh, we don't really know yet. But we will. And, I think just kind of knowing what some of the parameters might look like can be helpful. Just a couple of tips and strategies for parents as you're kind of making your way through the summer. If you haven't yet and you anticipate there being difficulty with your child wearing a mask, please start to look at opportunities for them to practice wearing that mask, particularly if that's something that you feel will be important to maintain health and safety for your family. I would encourage you to kind of start with some of that mask training. We are also seeing some kids responding much better to hats with a plastic shield in front, and that those are available online right now. They may not be in the fall. So if you think that might be a good idea for your child, it's another opportunity. Kind of gets it off of their face, and that's been helpful. Don't be afraid to go out and get a couple of those commercial workbooks for the grade that your child just left behind, math skills, reading skills. If your child is getting reading intervention, reach out to the interventionist and ask what kind of books you should be reading over the summer. Do your best to just maintain whatever skills you have. If you start to feel like the fall is coming and you're very anxious, go ahead and reach out to your IAP coordinator, your special ed teacher, or your district special ed director, and go ahead and get on their radar screen. Sending an email now saying, I don't know when these meetings are going to start, but I know it's going to be important to have one. Can you let me know what you're thinking? There's a way to reach out and establish communication that doesn't feel like, get me first on your list. I need to know what's going to happen immediately. But go ahead and reach out. talk to each other, watch for guidance on your school district's website. That's probably where it's going to hit first. And so those are just some tips for parents as we get into June and July. And then, I think we'll plan to see everybody again, probably in July when we have more information.
Yeah,
that'll
why
be
don't
great.
you just reach out when we have something definitive, and we'll get you set up and we'll do another one. That would be great.
Sounds great.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, very good to see you guys. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.